Good morning, everyone. So we're here to do a Q&A group discussion, right? To follow up on our finding your niche, connecting with your target audience, growing your ideal collector base that we did earlier this week. So we have a few people who are here live, and I also have a few people who sent me questions by email. So what I really want is for us to have really an open conversation. I don't necessarily have all the answers, right? Hoping that we can all have an open mind about this. And please, I don't necessarily, like I said, have all the answers. If you have an experience with something and you want to, put in your 2 cents, please, let's have a conversation about this. It's not just me yapping away. So I want this to be a group thing. I'm also opening up the chat box. So if you want to ask a question or just add a comment, put it here. I'll unmute you. We can talk about it. Okay. So who wants to get started? Or I can go, if we want to break the ice, I can go with the questions I got by email. But if someone's here and like to ask a question, now's the time to do it. How about we start with you, Angela, because I have your question. You sent it to me and you're here too. So how about I put you on the spot?
Okay, sure. So I thank you so much for the webinar the other day. It did get me thinking and brainstorming in a lot of great new directions, so I was very excited. I realized that my ideal collector or client that I'm looking for, and these are clients that I actually already have, so I'm kind of using them as a model, and how do I get more of them, is primarily like a wealthy woman who cares about empowering women, kind of creating more equity, is interested in kind of political, social structure issues, someone who has enough expendable income that they can purchase a large painting. They like beautiful things, but they also really care about substance and conceptual underpinnings and things that have some sort of kind of intellectual bent. My work is kind of sources art history and is about kind of restoring agency to female bodies throughout art history. So someone who kind of cares about those things, obviously, which led me to, brainstorm a little bit that this would be someone who is on museum boards or college boards, someone who donates, kind of goes to galas, is charitable, is active in kind of political stuff. But my question is, how do I reach these people? Probably most of the artwork that they're purchasing is through blue chip galleries. Mm-hmm. I have relationships with middle level galleries, but the sales aren't happening the way I want them to. I'm trying to get up into that upper echelon, but that can be that's like a whole other can of worms. So I guess we're trying to figure out, without having to buy $1,000 tickets to the galas, without having to, I don't know, do I just send postcards to people's names at the museums that I know that they volunteer for? What do I do? How do I reach them?
Okay, so I think this is really interesting, and I think it applies to a lot of, because I think this is the question I get the most, right? How do I reach, now that I've found who I want to work with, right? How do I reach them? So there's a couple of things, right? So the people who have bought from you in the past, because now you're making assumptions about the people who you bought from and who bought from you in the past. Now, how did they buy from you? What are the sales channels that you went through to sell to them?
They met me through my gallery in Houston. So,
okay.
And I was part of a residency program there that I got a lot of publicity through that.
Okay.
And actually, I have a residency program coming up this fall, so that might be not a bad idea in New York. So maybe I need to look at people who are involved with that program, who donate to it and things like that.
Because that's one thing, right? So we know that that kind of group of people usually buy through galleries or advisors or art consultants, right? So they like to have the relationship with the artist. Once it's validated by a gallery an art consultant, an advisor, right? So building a network of these people will be maybe for you like a stepping stone to reaching those people directly, because you're right, they're not as easy to connect with, right? They have this guard, and also they'll want that first validation from their advisors, and then once they have that validation, then yes, they will connect with you. I think in the message you sent me, you talked about speaking engagements, right? Which I think make a lot of sense. A couple of other things that I was thinking for you was really PR, like getting featured, getting a third party, right, to talk about you, again, with this idea of getting that outside validation, right, and getting under the people you want to notice you, getting under their radar, right? So PR, getting press around the work that you do, the message around your work, right? Which, if it's not communicated, is not necessarily like, it has to be communicated so that people know about it and really value it. So I think PR, right, would be a great way for them to drive traffic to your website, to drive traffic also in interest around your work from advisors, from galleries that could eventually be interested in representing you and showing your work in front of your ideal client, right? So another thing I was thinking is that these people are a lot about experiences, right? Creating experiences for them. So for instance, I have a client who works in I would say her clientele is, she sells to galleries, and her clientele is really people who buy through galleries, but she also creates events and experiences at her studio, right, where she invites women to experiment what she does in a very unique way that's not the old school workshop kind of way. It's really her own thing. And this had led her, when she started this really like a side business, but now it's really leading her to have that side business. Plus these women who are coming to her studio discover her work, value it much more, and some of them have led to become collectors or referred people who were collectors to her, right? Because a lot of what happens is that people don't necessarily understand why the art is expensive, right? They don't, until they meet the artist, understand what the creative process is all about, how long it takes to create the work. And I don't mean when I say how long it takes, I don't even mean about creating the painting or the photo itself, but the whole background, right? It doesn't take you 2 hours to create a painting or 15 hours. It takes you 15 years or 25 years. We know that, right? So, so getting these people in to live experiences where they get to know you more intimately and what your work is all about, gets them interested later on to maybe purchase, collect, be more of a patron to you, right? The other thing I would say is get involved, right? Without necessarily having to buy $1,000 tickets to events. Getting involved again in a cause where maybe the board members would be people who are your target audience, right? And seeing how you could get involved with your art. So I know there's controversy around, like, should I donate my art to silent auctions? Are they taking advantage of me? Blah, blah, blah. My answer to that is, if this is a win-win, it's a win-win, but it has to be a win-win. So like, if you do think that it can be a win-win for you to be in front of these people, and that maybe donating a smaller piece or a print, but having that visibility and getting that free ticket for the gala and being introduced by, as a guest of honor, and then being able to speak about it, right? It's not just, oh, come by at 2 p.m., drop your piece and don't come back, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But if you're you get to know the board members and network with them and meet with them, then that could be something to consider, right? So doing postcards is not a bad idea. I think it's a great way to start them getting to know you, but I think it needs to be part of a bigger strategy around the know, like, and trust factors, right? So that will get them to maybe know you, right? They haven't heard from you ever in their lifetime. So like, oh, wow, okay, this is interesting. But I think it needs to be part of a bigger strategy where you'll build the like and trust factor. So because I don't think that the sale will come just from a postcard, direct marketing like that, unless you send maybe thousands, you can expect to have a certain ROI. But we would have to plan something that would be, that would have like a follow-up strategy, maybe a studio invitation afterward. You see where I'm going with this? Like it would have to build something to really build that trust factor, because with the postcard, you're just raising awareness, but then we need to build trust by getting you into the press and things like that, right? Not the press. When I said it, I was just like, whoa, my French is coming out, man. So, but I think also what would be interesting is for you to ask, right? Maybe reach out to a few people who have, because you know, when I talked about the validation part, right? Maybe to think about a few ideas that you have, and if you have past collectors who you feel fit that description and you're comfortable either inviting them for coffee or sending them a 3-question email and asking them, right, open-ended question as to why they collect art, what is their decision-making process, right? Yesterday on the lab, someone was asking me about that part, right? The validation part. So I think like you could have maybe a few ideas up your sleeve, but then go and maybe test those ideas with people that you know that fit that description and see how they respond to it. That can serve 2 purposes, right? Give you that validation, and maybe even when people start seeing that you're taking action, they might be willing to open a few doors for you, right? Oh, Angela, you're thinking about doing this. Wait, let me introduce you to this person, or I know this organization that has a board that's super active and maybe I can open up a door for you or introduce you, right? So it serves like when you start validating your ideas, it serves really the purpose of knowing if you're going the right direction, but also building some partnerships. Because really, I think for you and for many of you who are listening, right, when we want to grow our audience, there's basically three ways to grow an audience. Okay, it's not like we're not going to the moon and back here. Like there's 3 ways. Okay, the first way is organic. So that's the way you've been doing it so far, one by one, very like nurturing and courting people one by one. That's the first way. The second way, or doing a blog post or doing a video, right? That's how we do it organically. The second way is through paid. So paid content. So maybe an advertisement, or you're paying to get people to drive like Google ads or things like that, like, which in your case I would not recommend, but an artist who's doing maybe more mainstream work would be a way to do it. And then the third way is through partnerships, right? Partnerships, using third parties and capitalizing on their audience to drive traffic to yours, get people from that. So that's why I was talking for you about PR or like speaking engagements, right? You leveraging, looking at organizations, media, publications that have that audience that you're just like, I want these people, and seeing how can you have a conversation with them or pitch an idea to them. That would be a win-win. I feel we've covered so much with that short question. So how does that sound, Angela?
So that sounds good. While you were talking, I was thinking I should just put together some sort of introduction to send to museum education departments or to whoever is the chair of the board to see if they do like collectors meetings or something like, or board member meetings. And if they are looking for artists, because oftentimes they have events and they're wanting to do programming, and why not offer yourself up to do that? It just seems a little forward and a little uncomfortable, but maybe there's a way to do it that,
Well,
you know.
uncomfortable is usually good because it means, right, that you're putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone. But not only that, there's like maybe 100 artists who are thinking about doing it and they're not, and you're the one who's actually gonna do it, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, I lost it. Wait, you were saying reaching out, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, we're in an era, okay, again, this applies to everyone here. We're in an era of content, okay? Everybody needs content. Museum need activities to, like, it's not enough now that they just have exhibition, right? With their exhibition, they have artist talks and they have cocktails and they have PR and they have this and they have that. Everybody now on their website has a blog or a vlog. Everybody's on social media. What's social media? It's just people exchanging content, right? So we're in an era where content is more than ever what people are hungry for. And if you can really narrow down, right, your messaging and really show them again that it's a great fit, because the people they want to talk to, because they're the same as you, right? The museum, they're looking for donors who are exactly the same people that you're looking to buy your art. So the more you can show them that your message will appeal to their audience, so it's adding value to their program, right? Then there's no reason why they wouldn't say yes. Because everybody's looking for content right now.
Is that the education department then in museums, or who are you addressing when you're reaching out to?
Well, in your case, it would depend. It would depend. First, I think you would need to sit down and think about what is the message and who is it for? Why is it relevant to these people? And then doing some research. And I think before even sending a pitch, it would be worthwhile maybe for you to do a few phone calls to really validate like who's the right person. Because if you send the pitch to the wrong person in terms of, I don't do that, that person will not spend a lot of time trying to figure out who they should forward it to. So you might want to see like, oh, I have this idea. I was thinking about sharing it with this department. Do you do these kinds of events? Yes, of course we do. Okay, great. So I'll follow up by email or something like that. Because every museum is different, depending on the size of the museum or even like I highly recommend, right, to look at other types of organizations that are maybe not necessarily so close to the arts themselves, but are the same audience, because then you can even, you're bringing an edge as an artist, right? You're bringing an edge so I know an artist who does a lot of, he's working, it's been 2 years he's on his third body of work around anatomy, the body's anatomy, and he has a whole artist statement, really creative process around that, right? And he's been doing talks at, doctors, medical associations, things like that, right? Who are interested about, and when he pitches his idea, people are just like, yeah, arts and science, like it's been part of our world for centuries, but it's kind of been lost lately, right? And that's what he's bringing back, how art and science used to be actually together, and now it's kind of drifted apart, and he wants to bring that back together. So he's kind of developing this niche of having these talks, right, and doing public appearances through that audience. And of course it's going well for him because it's an audience that can afford art. So it makes sense. Yeah. Great. So you've got Your work cut off for you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, who's next? We've got Melody, we've got Kathy, Jennifer. Who would like to go next? Hot seat. Okay, Melody, great. I think I need to unmute you. You're muted, right?
I'm here.
Hey,
Hi.
okay, hi, Melody.
Hi. In the part 4 of validating your ideas on Monday.
Yeah.
Was it Monday?
Wednesday. Okay.
Wednesday. You were talking about meeting up with networking groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure what kind of networking groups you were referring to. Does it just depend on
Well, tell me a
you're
little bit about your ideal collector, and we can brainstorm on networking groups.
Okay. I'm kind of a little hodgepodgey, but it's I don't feel like I fit in a niche. I guess that's what everybody says. But I actually come from a more conservative background, but I want to bring the arts into that. And I think that sometimes it's underappreciated in a quality way.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe people who are thinking outside of the box, but have that more conservative spiritual background.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
So have you sold your work before, or are you just starting out?
Yes, I have sold it, but it's mostly to people that I know. Yes.
Mostly to people that you know,
Mm-hmm.
but still, so where do you think that these people hang out? These people that you want to reach?
See, I've been thinking about that, and they're kind of like me. They're kind of little hodgepodgey sectors of a bigger world, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that's interesting because sometimes when we think about our ideal collector, we either have an idea of who we think they are, and they're over there and we're over here, and there's this barrier, and how we're going to really reach them, a little bit like Angela was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing from you is the other type, that you're kind of reflecting your target audience on yourself.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
So you're thinking, okay, I like my art, so I'm guessing other people who like the same things as me will like my art.
Right.
Is that a little bit what you're thinking?
Well, I think that's what I heard you say last week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the last session was, people who share your beliefs or who are going to be interested in your work.
Yeah. So they ultimately, it helps when they share your beliefs because you're going to talk about them. So, so tell me about where you hang out then, right? So where is it? Because you were asking about what is a networking event, right? But a networking event, so traditionally people will think, oh no, I don't want to be going to like a happy hour, drinks, having to exchange business card kind of thing. No, that's not what networking means. Networking can be just meeting up with one person, or it can be going to that place where you share a business card. But if the people who go to a business networking event are not your ideal audience, right? Your ideal collector, then there's no point in doing that. So really it's thinking about where you think these people might hang out, because you talked about like spirituality, right? You talked about that, right? So how so is it more spirituality in terms of like church groups, or do you mean something more like yoga groups, or where are you seeing yourself and your ideal collector?
Well, as for myself, I'm a Christian,
okay.
So it'd be and I'm a mom, but I don't know that this necessarily, my mom's group is going to be the place that I'm going to be selling art to, but maybe so.
Mm-hmm. Well, so now I think this is a great, okay, so you see because here's the thing, we all need to start where we're at, okay? So now you're making assumptions, right? So you're making assumptions about, okay, so maybe moms, maybe people in my Christian group, but will they buy art? I don't think they're going to buy art. So now it's all in the assumption. So now this is good, because now you need to start writing all the reasons why these are maybe the right people and maybe not. And then identify what you need to validate to know, right? So that you can then maybe ask a couple of people in your church or in your mom's group to have coffee and validate what you're thinking. Validate if, and then you can start thinking about, okay, depending on what they tell you, right, what answers they give you, if they're the right fit, right, number one, and then maybe tweak your product offering, right? Are you still there, Melody? I feel like I lost you. Everybody else is still there, right? Okay. So I kind of lost Melody here. Maybe she'll hop on back. So anyway, if you check out the recording, Melody, so I want you to, so validate and ask them questions, right? You need to validate if these assumptions that they are not or that they are the right people is fine. Yeah, she dropped off. So that's the first thing you need to do. And then the second thing is if you need to develop, if they tell you, if by having conversations with them, yes, they're interested in art, but disposable income just isn't there because they're mothers and that's really their priority, or whatever reason they give you, is then looking at your product offering, right, and seeing how you can maybe, while continuing to do what you want to do, adjust to what they tell you they would be willing to buy, right? So maybe if pricing is an issue, then looking at maybe creating prints or smaller works, but that's something you need to go and validate with your people, because right now what I'm hearing is that it's still all in the assumption phase, and there's some validation that needs to be done. Okay, so maybe Melody will join us again later. Who else wants to join in the conversation? Or if you have something to add about what we're talking about, please say it. Yes?
I'll jump in. I feel like everyone else is a little bit more advanced in terms of their thinking of their audience, and I'm just completely at a loss. I mean, I know I could pretty much describe who's bought my art in the past, but I think that's been more because of quote unquote networking.
Okay.
And so I'm afraid that might limit, it's such a segmented section of people who bought my art. I don't want to solely rely on them. And so I'm just not sure. A side note, which also is a reason why I'm having a struggle, is I'm still trying to determine, I mean, I do oil paintings, pretty much abstract, and also, I'll do collages. I don't know if my product offering is too diverse, and that's causing me to not be able to zone in. But people are responsive to, my collages and my paintings. I don't know. I don't want to throw, the baby out with the bathwater type of thing.
Yeah. So tell me who's bought from you in the past.
Primary audience have been affluent Black women, baby boomers.
Okay.
Partly because of a context through my mother and my previous job. These women were members of that organization. So I was fortunate enough to have a lot of my art hanging in the office. And when they came to visit, they saw it, and it just took off from there.
Okay.
And then the other people who bought are more friends, my friends, Generation Xers, various, again, pretty well educated. I think all of us are educated. Some are married, some are single, and diverse in terms of ethnic background. So,
okay. So we're talking a lot about the demography, right? This is more like the demographic part of it. Now let me ask you this. As you're thinking about your vision, as you're thinking about where you want to go with your art, right? As a business. So you talked about you like to do you have the collage, you have the oil work. So where is it that you see yourself headed, right? Because when we're thinking about our target audience, we can look at who's buying now. But what I prefer is to think about looking ahead, right, where we want to go, and think as if we're already there and say, okay, I'm going to focus on these people.
Right. I mean, I definitely think if I'm answering this question correctly, that I would be more, I don't see gala representation for
Okay.
me. I don't, I feel like it's the one-on-one connection or thereof, whether I connect with them via social media or something. Or like you were saying about hosting events or experiences, trying to get audiences that way. Yeah. So I don't know if that's the right answer to your question.
There's no right answer because it's your business, right? There's no right or wrong. It's just your answer. Okay, so you see now, so you know that that's where you're headed, right? So basically what you want is to create a collector circle, right? A circle of people who will follow you, buy from you every year. You will want to nurture a group, right, of like-minded people, right? Like-minded people. And something we talked about around, people who do abstract, right, is really more about the message, right? The concept, the messaging that will lead people maybe more to you, right? There's the aesthetics of it, right? But it's not like you're doing, dog portraits, right? So then, because when you're doing dog portraits, then there's a whole thing around, the love of dogs and the community around dog owners, right? So it's kind of an obvious one. But then when we're talking about abstract, so there's going to be a couple of things, right? It's maybe talking to a few people who have already bought your work and asking them, like, was it their first purchase? How do they collect art, right? Do they see themselves? Do they perceive themselves as collectors? Because we're using this term amongst ourselves, but a lot of people I know don't consider themselves collectors, right? So how do they consider themselves? How do they like to be approached? When is it that is it a splurge for them, or is it something that's just part of their regular purchasing habits, right? So that then once you get more information on, was it a first purchase? Was it something, do they need to be educated, right? Because if you're not in the gallery scene, right, where it's more people who already have that knowledge, that sensibility, right, then probably you will have some work to do around education, right? Educating people around what it means to be an artist, what is the meaning behind your work, why is your work valuable, right? So there's going to be some work to be done around that, so that people get to know you and trust you and say, okay, yes, I can buy from her, I'm making a good purchase decision. Because something that again applies to everyone here, and I didn't invent this quote, I read it, but I think it's a really good one. And do I have the book here? Yes. So I don't know if, for those of you who want to have more information, more going deep around how the art market works, I really recommend this book. It's called The $12 Million Stuff Shark by Dawn Thompson. And it talks about the dynamics of the really high-end art market. But it's really interesting to know how it works and how all branding, right? And we have a workshop coming up on branding, but how branding is something that most artists resist, but is so important. And the author says, and I laughed my head off when I read it, like, if you think artists are insecure, collectors are way more insecure, okay, than artists. So what that means is that collectors need a lot of validation before they will buy work, because they're worried that they're not buying the right piece, that what they're buying, they're going to either have buyer's remorse, which buyer's remorse is real, or that they think it's good, but they feel they don't really know what's good. So maybe they're making a mistake, right? And they're going to look ridiculous about buying this because actually this is not good, right? So for you, you're going to have, since you're not using a third party who comes and validates you, right, like a gallery, you need to really go deep into the people who bought from you, get to know them, and understand what made them say yes, right? How did they get that validation that they trusted you and your work sufficiently, right? That they said, yes, I will buy. So you gave an example. You said, my work was hung in this place, so people saw it. So not only did they see it, but the fact that it was hung there and they had that specific trust or relationship with that place gave you that extra layer of credibility. Am I right? Or does that make sense?
I mean, that, and then also the fact that I worked there, so we had it before too.
Yeah, so the trust is already there, right?
Been there for years, yeah, first couple years. So yeah.
So it would be interesting to do a little bit of research and see what made them, say yes, and maybe reach out to a few people who have bought from you, maybe through your social media, or maybe that you didn't know as much, right? Who are maybe not so close to you. Maybe they knew people who knew you, and see if they wouldn't mind answering a few questions about their decision-making process, right? How they heard from you. Was it a first purchase? What made them say yes ultimately? What inspired them from your work? And so that you can reflect that back, right? What doubts maybe came about, like, and what made them go from maybe to, oh yes, let's do this, right? So that then you can start, once you know what drew them to you, then you can reflect that more in your messaging and get that across more. In terms of the resistance part, right? The part where they weren't maybe sure, then you can address those objections up front in your messaging, so that because people who don't buy, it's because they're procrastinating or they have a question that remains unanswered, really. So I think there's still like a little bit of research. And in your case, since you're starting out, there's going to be a little bit of trial and error that's going to have to be, like, you're going to have to accept that you're not going to get it right at the first try, right? So you're going to have to put yourself out there and with an open mind, right? Not holding too tight to the outcome, and then gathering data, right? So the gathering of the data, like I did this, and even like when you do social media posts, right? I'm going to put a social media post out that's like super vulnerable, and then I'm going to see what happens. Oh yes, it's working. My audience are super sensitive. Check. I'm putting in something out there that's about, I don't know, how art values throughout the years. I'm just giving examples here, like super pragmatic blog about, the value of art. Nobody's responding to that. Okay, my people, what they're looking for, what they want is for me to share about my journey, my art, right? So you see where I'm going? So the best way to do that is to test really different things and see what kind of reactions you make. Even when you're doing a sale, right? When you're asking for the sale, asking for it in a very pragmatic way, then asking it by telling a story, and then seeing what works, and keeping data, keeping notes about what's worked, what hasn't, so that you can always stop doing what's not working and scale what is.
Okay. Thank you.
Long answer to a short question. So hopefully this will give you some food for thought. Melody, we lost you. No, now I can hear you. Wait, I can't hear you. Okay. Okay.
My computer died on me right when you were answering. So
so you can go back and listen because I finished my answer. But basically, No, I don't remember what I said. So you can.
You're talking about, I lost you when you're saying, ask people in the group, the Mara Mom.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So because now you're making assumptions and so you want to list all the assumptions, go test your assumptions and see if you're just basically trying to reflect who you are. And basically you're going to realize that other people have other reactions to the things, right? And then once you know more, then absolutely you can start developing products and services that fit, that are tweaks to what you're doing. So if you realize that, yes, they would be willing to buy, but it's really a budget thing, let's just say that that's what you validate, right? It's not they don't care, it's not they don't love it, it's not a priority, they just have 3 kids, it's just not what they're doing right now. Then maybe you need to look at what you could offer that would be at a lower price point while continuing to do what you love. Maybe, again, it's because, like I was saying earlier, maybe it's because they don't know what's good art, or they feel insecure. So then you have to create content and you have to help them in their objections and in their insecurities.
So educate.
Yeah, exactly. So researching some more, getting those answers so they're not just things because that's something else, right? Sometimes because we reflect too much about what we think is a reality, we start telling ourselves stories in our heads, right, that are not necessarily true. It's not going to work. It's too expensive. Nobody can afford it. Too expensive for me, for you, for somebody else are very different things, right? It's not because I don't spend money on something that someone else won't. So we need to stop thinking just in terms of what our situation is, or what a few people around us have told us. Because if they've told us our work is too expensive, then clearly they're not the right people, and we need to maybe shift our product offering or shift the audience. Okay? So go do a little bit of that, and we'll see how that goes. Okay? Reach out to people. Kathy, Lou, you're muted. Hi.
Hi.
So I had your question. You sent me your question, but maybe you wanna tell me a little bit.
Actually, I didn't get to write it down because I just emailed.
I can read it if you like. I can read it. I have it here.
Okay, sure. But I think you kind of answered it in the last part of.
Oh yes, I remember. Okay, so yes, what do you do when your target audience, who you think might resonate more with your work, does not have the disposable income to actually purchase your work? Do you find more economic alternatives to make your work available to them, or do you find another market? Or do I try to find a sweet spot in painting what more sellable audience would be interested in seeing in their homes? Okay, no, it wasn't too much of a confusing question at all. So you're right, we talked about this before, and I think one of the challenges, so I think the sweet spot is dangerous. And here's why. Because I think that you might end up diluting and not helping anyone. If you try to do too much what they want, what one group wants, and then what the other group wants, you're gonna end up not pleasing anyone, right? By trying to please too many people, you're not gonna please anyone. So we have to be careful with that. The other thing is creating things. So I was, again, talking to an artist yesterday about that, right? Where she listened to a podcast where a business person said the problem with artists is that they create things and then they put it to the market and they hope that the market will want it. And they should do the opposite, right? They should see what the market wants and then creates it. And this is what I did. Clearly, that person doesn't understand what being an artist is, right? Because then you're not an artist if you're doing that, clearly. you're an artisan, you're just anyway.
Much production.
Which okay. So
It's not a bad thing.
it's not a bad thing. It's just that we need to nuance everything, right? Because if you're just giving the market what it wants, then everybody can do that. I can do that tomorrow. Like I can do that. Give the market what it wants. Like it's just you're not in the business of selling mattresses, okay? And that's a big problem, because artists get business advice from people that don't understand art. And they mean well, but they just don't understand what comes into buying art. And what we want is for people to want to buy it because it's you, right? And it's the same thing for any other type of, think about fashion. When people are buying fashion from designers, they're buying it because they want that piece from a designer. The designer does not go into the market and say, what does the market want? And then design it. No, they design what they want because they're the trendsetters, right? They're the people who know before we do what we're gonna want. And that's really your job as an artist, is to create what you think is the best shit piece of art possible. And then communicate it and become a leader and let people know that this is the best thing. Like, this is my story. This is my message. This is what I'm putting out there. And this is why it's important, right? This is why it's important. And so this is why you want a piece of it too. You see where I'm going with this in terms of
Yes.
creating something for the market versus you bringing people who are the right. Now, with all of this being said, we have to be realistic because we also want to sell, right? We also want to make a living. We all have bills to pay. So that's like kind of what I just said here is more like where we want to head, right? The vision, the long-term thing, but what today, like what happens today. So I liked your first option that you said. What about, so I think my audience doesn't have, okay, so first, the same thing like I said to Melody. You said, I think my audience can afford it, right? That's not enough. We need to know. So maybe if you're you're showing your work and you keep hearing it's too expensive, then okay, maybe. But you know that and also something about pricing people. Often people will use that as an excuse, right? It's kind of easy to say, it's too expensive and walk away. I've seen people try to sell $8 small paintings and they were still told it's too expensive. Okay, clearly it's not about the money. Clearly the problem isn't that. Clearly it was something else. It wasn't the right venue. It was people who just weren't interested in the art, right? Or they just weren't the good fit for the aesthetics and the concept of it. They just didn't get it. So first I want you, so when I took notes from you, I said, did you ask? Don't assume. That's the first note that I wrote to myself when you emailed me. So, and you're right, maybe if you do have people who say, man, I'm a huge fan, I would buy it, but I just can't afford it, then it would be interesting to test new things, right? Maybe prints or maybe something else, right? A way for you to sell the work, right? If people really like your work, maybe it's, you said you're in an illustrative type of style, then maybe licensing, right, would be another way for you to get your work out there. But I think right now you're still at a point where you're making assumptions and you haven't really tested them.
Well, actually, part of my assumption comes from my friends asking me to do artwork for them. Mm-hmm. And when I mentioned that, well, these are my rates, crickets. Mm-hmm. So it's like they like it, but not enough to pay for it.
Okay. So clearly, did you follow up?
I mentioned that I'm trying to get started and try to make a living out of this. Mm-hmm. But after that, they kind of lost interest and I didn't want to be pushy about it.
Okay, so a couple of things here, and we're going to talk about that during the sales workshop, but a couple of things I would recommend you to do. So first, I'm trying to make a living out of this. That's why these are my prices. Like, no. Okay, none of that, because you're talking way too much. Like, would you ever go into a store and ask how much is this book, and then the person would say, well, you know, the book is $20 because, you know, I'm trying to grow my business and I'm thinking about buying the building out next door and make a bigger library here, so that's why it's $20. Like, no, it's $20 because it's what's written on it. That's the price, right? So that's the first thing, because, you know, when I said earlier that collectors or art buyers in general are insecure, if you're telling them that you're trying to figure it out, they're like, okay, call me back when you figured it out, because I don't want to be, nobody wants to be your first buyer, other than your parents maybe, but nobody wants to be your first buyer. So you need to build that credibility part. Okay, that's the first thing, Kathy. The second part is I would reach out to them and say, you know what I'm doing, you know, then you can maybe piggyback on what you told them. You know that I'm really building a business around this, and would you mind answering a few questions for me to help me understand, right? And this is really, and maybe you can keep it anonymous, right? Maybe you can do it in a little type form kind of thing, and no more than 5 questions, and then really go in deep and say, and then try to figure out why they didn't buy with open-ended questions, and see if it was really the price point, and if it is the price point, what would have made them say yes, or just what, or maybe not even say if it's the price point, right? What would have made them say yes? So that way, if people tell you that it's too expensive, then maybe you can think about what you could do to overcome that objection, right? If you understand, but you also need to understand, before you ask them what made them say no or what made them say yes, you need to take one step further and say what motivated them to reach out to you, right? So what were their motivations? What excited them? So that when you tweak your product offering, you're still keeping what interested them, what excited them, and then you're just tweaking the part that made them say no, right? So that people maybe reach out to you for a commission. The price, no, is not the right price for them for a commission. Fine, because those are my prices. I will not change them, but I have something else that I can reach out and offer you that might be more in the range of what you're looking to do. Okay?
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so last question is from Mihaela. Hello, lady.
Hello.
Bonjour. Nice to see you.
I'm happy I was on time because I was in the metro when I wrote you, so I was not sure to get home on time.
Great. Well, I said I have her question here. I said if I don't, I'll wait in case she shows up, and if not, I will answer it at the end. So do you want to ask me your question, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, so I was just, I had a struggle finding my niche for a long time, and I was discussing with someone lately who suggested that maybe I could address female entrepreneurs, to style their office, which I thought it was a very good idea because I do abstract work, and it's very colorful, and it could be a fit.
Yes.
But I would like to do like a sort of market research.
Yes.
And I was wondering what kind of questions I could ask. I mean, how could I test the waters to see if this is something they could be interested in?
Okay, so absolutely. And already I'm thinking, okay, there's a couple of things I'm thinking. So either you can ask this, you can decide this now, or you can decide it later after you do your research. But one thing is I would definitely niche it down a little more. Okay, so because women entrepreneurs is very, very large. I mean, even like dentists are entrepreneurs, real estate agents are entrepreneurs, massage therapists are entrepreneurs, like yoga studio owners. So I would try to just niche it down a little more to help you do your research. And then when you do your research, if that niche isn't the right one, you can tweak and pivot because you'll know that the problem was the niche. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you go too large, then you'll have difficulty knowing who it's really working for and who it isn't. You know, is it more service-based businesses or product-based businesses, right? Is it because people are bringing people into their offices, clients into their offices, right? Is that why?
I was thinking more about the online world, like probably coaches, like yourself.
Okay.
Because I'm in several online groups, and mainly, I see a lot of coaches. So again, I'm assuming that this could be a fit, but I'm not sure actually.
Okay. So it could be. My first thought is not sure, because I'm thinking like people who have offices that have like waiting rooms and meeting rooms, and they bring people into their offices, right? Maybe they're coaches, right? Maybe therapists, coaches. Maybe you're narrowing it down, niching it down to the service industry, maybe the wellness industry even, right? But I think it's so I think around, because why would they purchase, right? So you need to think about that, so that when you're messaging it, right, you're gonna, so if you're putting it around the wellness industry, so coaches, therapists, people like that, then you're gonna want to bring a message around how art and wellness works together, right?
But it's true that the kind of the message behind my art is that I use golden paint, so that you can see when you move around the painting. And I'm talking a lot about the idea of perspective, that everything is a question of perspective. And I try to use positivity and positive affirmations. You know, like when I
exactly. So you see how you're already niching it down, versus, I'm going to give you another example, versus a lawyer's office where it's all about le prestige, right? The artwork that they choose will all be around, will it impress my client, right? And I'm not inventing this. This is true. I've sold to lawyers. Like, I know how they're thinking, right? So a lawyer will invest in some art to impress their clients, because that's the only thing that matters, right? The client. But so the therapist or the coach or the wellness expert, right, will also want to have a beautiful space for their clients, but the reason why they will choose you will be different. It's not about status or prestige. It's about how maybe the artwork makes them feel or makes their clients feel, right? And how it maybe creates the environment or the experience that they want to create for themselves, their employees, and the people who come in, right?
Okay.
So, but we're moving away
back to the question.
Because your question is how, but you see, but this is the first thing, because you'll want to validate assumptions with them. So if they don't feel that it's just for them, it's going to be very difficult for you to dive deeper, right? So that's the first thing. I would really niche it down a little bit, so that you can, when you reach out to them, they really feel that you're creating the art for them, right? Not the other way around. And then absolutely, I mean, I would reach out to them and ask if you could have a conversation. I feel, okay, for those of you who can have actual conversation with your ideal client rather than sending an email, highly recommended, right? Because you can go much deeper, because you can, as they're talking to you, you can pivot the conversation to go deeper in a subject that you maybe hadn't thought of, right? So I would try to get on the phone with a few people or on Skype or whatever, and try to understand where like where art stands in their life and business, right? Really understand, like I was saying to Jennifer earlier, right? Are they at their first purchase? Where are they in their life cycle of purchasing art, right? Are they newbies? Have they never even considered it? Is it something that they're very passionate about? Do they need to be educated? Are they, like I said earlier, are they a little bit self-conscious about making the right or wrong decision, right? So that's what you'll want to bring into the conversation, understanding. And then I think you'll want to know, once you get more about their aspiration, their motivations, their reasons behind the why, I would also shift the conversation to the more practical stuff, and maybe ask them how they purchased art in the past, what were their decision buying process, who did they reach out to, did they look for advice? Because in many cases, if you work with businesses, you might also want to work with maybe designers or home staging experts, right? Because these people so maybe businesses, bigger businesses will have an art consultant. If you're talking here more small type businesses, they might do it with their designer, they might do it themselves, right? So
what about the online, like the really home, the people that work from home, that have a home office, like that are like you, like often on the phone and having a painting behind it, or
exactly. So that's what you like. How important is it for you? Like what kind of image? So you can ask them, like, since you're we have a joke, and when we talk amongst each other in the online business, we have a joke that we show each other that we're actually wearing pants today, because nobody ever sees that we have pants right on. So there's a joke about, yes, I am wearing pants today. But so asking them, like, what kind of environment or brand, right, do they want to communicate when they're being visible online, right? What is important to them? What values do they want to transpire from their message, right? What do they want their image? Where do they see themselves? Do they see themselves high end? How do they position themselves so that afterwards, right, when you're reflecting back to them your messaging, right, is that you're offering them maybe turnkey products to really create that image and that experience that they want to transpire through the screen, right?
Yeah, because I was thinking even having like sometimes commissions with the brand colors, the colors of their brand, but reflected in the painting.
So then maybe you can ask them, like, what are your challenges as an online entrepreneur to really communicate your brand when you're online, when you're visible, right? So I know someone who's been resisting doing videos, really, really bad resisting, because she feels that she has no place to do a video that would look professional enough, right? Mm-hmm. So you see, so there's maybe some resistance there that they know and then you'll have to understand where this resistance is coming from, what's keeping them from being that high-end brand that they want to be, and then come to them with a solution, right? So in your case, what's really great now that we're talking about it and thinking about it is that you're going to be able to address a problem. And with a lot of a problem or a challenge, I should say a challenge that a lot of artists have is they say, well, I'm not really I'm not really solving a problem, right? And in many cases, art does not solve a problem. It's a luxury item, right? But if by talking to these women, you can really, really zero in on a problem and then reflect that problem back to them and give them a very tangible solution to the problem with all the benefits that they're gonna gain, well, then you've got a slam dunk right there, right? And it might be interesting to see if you have some people maybe near you physically that that could, maybe you could lend paintings to them and they could use it in their space and then maybe give you a testimonial on how it's changed. Not just because here's what's going to happen here in your case, it's going to change their brand positioning, right? It's going to elevate their brand positioning, but not only that, it's going to build their confidence, right? Because they're going to feel much more confident to show up. Because, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I did something today which I shouldn't have. I posted on a group asking for 4 or 5 people, if they want, I can create something for them for free, which I know that we should not do. And so they can indeed stage it in their house or in their office, and then send me a picture that I could use for social media. So this is something.
Why shouldn't you do that?
Sorry?
Why shouldn't you do that?
Well, I understood that it's not a good idea to give things for free, but I thought it's not for free because it's like, well, it is for free, but I will have something in return.
I see this as a partnership.
Exactly.
Do you feel good about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Until someone told me, you should not do it for free. So then I was having second thoughts.
People will tell you to do it for free, then they'll tell you not to do it for free, and we don't really care what they think. Okay, what we care is what you think and how you feel. So if for you to get, your goal is to get your art in the hands of the people, and now your job though is going to be to really not give those pieces to anybody. Right? So now your job is going to be like super the detective, right? So the people who say, yes, I want your art, then you're going to have to do a little bit of a screening process, right? Maybe you do a little questionnaire that they need to answer, or you do a little bit of detective work and figure out, okay, is this really my ideal client? Is this person just looking for something for free, or will I be really able to learn by working with this person, right? So think about what your desired outcomes are. Testimonials are one, but I think you can move beyond that, right? Maybe ask them to answer a little survey before, a little survey after, to help you understand the transformation that happened. Maybe even test your shipping. Like, it's going to be a way for you to test your shipping process.
Exactly.
Like, it's all because when you get a paying client, you want your shit to be working good, right? So it's all fine to start and experiment. Like, some people, they experiment by doing stuff for their parents or for their neighbors. So you're experimenting with your target audience. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but you just make sure that you're clear on what your desired outcomes are and how you'll be able to make the most out of this experience. So choose wisely, right? Don't just take the first 3 people. And if the people who answer are not the right people, post again or look for another place, because you don't have to give it away just to the people just because they say yes.
No, I mentioned already that I would prefer people that are either interior designers or that have a passion for styling. So that, I mentioned this. Now I have to see indeed if those who answer,
Okay, so tell me this. I don't understand. So you said you wanted your target audience to be coaches and online entrepreneurs, and now you're telling me you want to give your pieces to designers.
No, not really designers, like people who have, but of course this group is like for general entrepreneurs, so it's not it's not specific for wellness as we discussed. But I think I agree with you that this is more the niche for me. If we niche it down, this will be the ideal target. but I try to have someone that, okay, when they will send a picture, that it will look nice. So if they have a nice office, or you know, someone that is passionate about interior design. Okay, I said also designers, if there is one, it's even better.
Yeah. Okay, I understand now what you mean.
So
yeah, so you want people who are actually going to value it. Once it gets to their home, they're actually going to hang it. It's not going to be wasted. So you're going to have to do a little bit of detective work and see, you know, who these people are, and maybe even, you know, get them on the phone beforehand before you actually choose them. Or like I said, prepare a little questionnaire. You know, you can do a little type form questionnaire. It's going to take you 5 minutes to make sure that these people understand what they're getting themselves into, because you don't want to lose your time, and you don't want to make them lose their time either. So you want to just be sure that you're doing it with the right people, because people are very eager to say yes to free stuff, but then when they have to follow through, it's not always the same thing.
That's true.
Right? So you want to have the testimonial, but you also want to be able to use that experiment for your testing your messaging, right? Getting clear on what their initial problem was and how they were feeling before, what the problem was, how you came with the solution, and how they're feeling now once they've had your work in their environment. How it's changed their business.
Okay. This is a great question for the testimonial, actually. So
exactly, because that's what we're going to want to put forth.
Because for the moment I only asked for the brand colors and the brand values. Yeah. So, and something else, if they have a word or something that they want to integrate in the painting.
Yeah, but maybe also you can ask them, like, how are you feeling right now about your work, so that you can then when you're selling, you can say, when I met Gina, she was very self-conscious about being visible online. She knew that was the part that was missing in the equation to really make her business boom. Or she knew that if she wanted to sell to a higher end market, she needed to up level her presentation, right? But she didn't really know how. So I came in and offered her turnkey project, whatever. And since then, well, I'll let Gina tell you herself. And then you have, the testimonial where Gina says that now she feels so much more confident and this and that.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay, anyone else has something to add, to say before we go? This is a great conversation.
Yes.
Yes,
I have one more thing to add.
Yes, of course.
I didn't get to ask. I didn't get to see the July 12th, the Wednesday discussion.
Yes, it's going to be sent to you all right after this.
Okay, yay. Okay. Oh, one last question. Would it be okay to gain feedback for the validation through offering, let's say, for example, on your Facebook page, to ask for volunteers to participate in a survey in exchange for samples of your work, for example?
Oh, yeah, you could do it like that. You can also offer a discount, right? Mm-hmm. So you see that all the time, right? I go to the supermarket and they tell me, fill out this survey and you can win a chance to win $1,000 worth. So you could do a contest, right, amongst the people who what you need to think about, because okay, I'm starting that sentence again. When comes the time to give out, give away something, whether it's a discount, whether it's a freebie, whether it has to start from within. It needs to feel good for you. If you're going to be resentful about doing a discount, if you feel that it's going to diminish your brand, it starts from you. If you think it's going to diminish your brand, it's going to diminish your brand, okay? If you feel good about it because you feel that it's a win-win, you know that people are taking time off their busy day to answer a survey, so you think it's fair game to give them 15% discount, all the power to you, but it has to come from within, because if you feel like, how are you going to feel think about how you're going to feel when the survey is over and you have to deliver these pieces. Are you going to be like, I can't believe I'm giving this out for free? If that's how you're feeling, then no, you're not, you shouldn't do it, right? Because then you're creating some sort of pattern there about giving things away and being resentful about it. But if you say, well, you know what, these people, they've been so generous, they really answered well, I'm glad I'm giving them 15%. And people, they're busy, so you're asking them to do something for you. You need to, and that's actually something I didn't mention on the workshop, and I mentioned it to the group, my lab group yesterday. When you're reaching out to people and asking them for their feedback or asking them to validate your ideas, it's the least you can do to thank them properly, right? Because these are the first people, like they're somewhat committed to you, right? Because they've done this part for you. They want to help you out. So, either it's a handwritten note, thank you note, either it's a little discount, either it's a little gift with their purchase. I mean, it's just about going that extra mile for people who, if they've done this for you, they'll maybe do more for you in the long term, right? So, so definitely a little incentive to get them to answer is not a bad thing at all. Good. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so that's a wrap for today. Thank you everyone who joined. And yeah, I hope you found it useful. And now don't just keep this all in your head. Go out there and reach out to people and validate your ideas and tweak, right? Make sure you're tweaking things and fine-tuning and scaling what's working and letting go of what's not working for you guys. Okay, well, wishing you all a lovely weekend.